All right, hi everyone. There has been even more progress in the human animation project. This is me building my own pipeline for animated shorts relating to markerless motion capture, projecting onto human bodies, and then being able to correct it inside of Blender. In previous videos, I gave an explanation for the process of using the Unreal machine learning combined with MetaHuman to get the body and facial captures, and then also preserving the facial rig throughout the entire process. And now we have preserved control rig. We have importing the multiple chunks from the different machine learning data sets from Unreal, stitching them together, baking them onto the control rig. And one thing you can also see here is I've done it in a slightly different way to the character DNA and character control rig add-on from Polyhammer, which generate the control rigs around the MetaHuman bodies. They already have an operation for importing animations. I've got my own one, which incorporates the kind of multi-chunk stitching as part of the process. And I've made certain decisions, like when baking the animation onto the control rig and or making the control rig usable, the root controller is sort of kept to an average point of the foot positions. I may make a change to that at some point. It's just at the moment to make it easier when editing sliding, preventing sliding. I'm going to talk to you about some of the scripts that I've made, new ones. And this is all run using my new pipeline system, which I did a video for a few days ago at the time of recording this. So before we get into it, I need your support on Patreon. It's been the new direction going forward for this year, working on my own production project, using it as an axis to come up with and develop new tools. I will put these extra scripts on there now, so they'll be available to access. The pipeline tool is already on there. This is for the $5 tier. Just think about it as you pay $5 a month and little old me in a studio just makes and designs random things that you can get access to. That's it. It's like hiring this for $5 a month. Now, obviously, these tools are not done yet, and they're not what I would call usable in a generic pipeline, but I'll be improving them over time. I will show you some footage I recorded last night at the end of the day, which shows you some of the reduction and detail scripts that are part of the manual editing process. All right, it's late and I've been at this all day. I've been working on simplification tools for the animation. And we've got this complex control rig now that was provided by the Polyhammer tool. And then I had to do a new animation assigning / baking script for the control rig. And then some compensation for the root at an average point of the feet as well. Basically just a custom way of doing this. And now I've been working on like correction scripts. And there's little moments where we've got things like, this singularity, like a likely quaternion rotation issue there. And we've got a script that can actually solve it now. So it considers the main foot control bone, as well as its associated ones in the family, like the spin and the heel. Press that. You can bring up the console. So it's going to scan through them on the frames. Usually these scripts are really fast, but this one's a bit longer because there's more to check. So it's detected something. Good. Okay, so it's done. And now, look at that. The spin's gone. It corrected the singularity issue. So now we can get back to editing. So I've got like simplification scripts now. So if like, this is already a reduced animation from the mocap because there's a reduction phase as well. But if you're an animator fixing this up and you think, there's too many frame points still here, then with that selected, you can reduce. So if I click that, it will reduce them. And by the way, there are so many parameters for these in the actual code that have not been exposed here yet. But this basically makes it easier for someone coming in to fix. And I think, well, if there's not much change between these frames, then I can just, delete those manually and carry on. But also, interestingly, we've got a script to insert detail where frames are missing. Now you might think, why do you want to do that? Well, it's because if you're doing something, this is probably not a very good example using a foot, but if you've got like an arm that's waving around a bit, let's actually do an example. Hang on. So we've got the arm coming up. Okay. So I'm going to select the range of frames where the arm comes up and I'm going to simplify it. Now, during that, you can just about see that it goes to the first point, then all of a sudden it changes to the next point, then all of a sudden it goes back. So you can see that it's a kind of low detailed thing. I can see a quaternion issue on the other hand as well. Maybe I'll do a general like quaternion corrective pass on the entire body. That would solve it. It might take a while. I'll get to that. But anyway, yeah. So you can see that it's almost linear. Point 1, point 2, point 3. So if an animator makes changes to this, because it will obviously be easier making changes to individual keyframes when there's fewer of them, right? So basically we've reduced it. That makes it easy to edit the points. It's a little bit like Cascadeur in the way that you're working with simple points and then you can interpolate between them, right? So that's my 3 keyframes. And obviously when you play them back, it's still a bit linear. So if I select the entire range here and insert selected control detail, what it will do is it will fill them back in, but it's going to try and make it less linear. So it almost creates like a curve between the points that the artist made. You can still tell that there are like definite points, but it basically just softens it out a bit to make it a bit more believable. Now I need to play with the parameters, but this is just a demonstration of how like you can reduce it to make it easy for an artist to edit and then increase it again to make it more believable. So this is the kind of workflow that I'm working through at the moment with building my own corrective scripts. Let me take a look at this. The chances of this actually working are almost zero with the way that, development goes. I know it works for the foot. I don't know that it works for the hand. So let's just take a look. Yeah, because it's kind of hard-coded for the foot at the moment. So, wait. Holy fucking shit, it worked. You kidding? It's straight up gone. So as you can see, there's progress, like in building custom Blender tools for animation cleanup. The hardest issues are still to come, which are the general sliding of the entire body within Root, but I believe it's doable. And, little things like the foot or the feet, having like a little bit of a fun, imprecise time. Again, I think there's things I can do for that. But yeah, there is progress. I should probably like hide the rest of these skeletal animations because it just makes it a bit messy to look at. But all of this is to say that the human animation pipeline and the animation correcting pipeline powered by my new pipeline tool is going very, very well. And it should give you an idea for what I'm going for, which is a combination of correction scripts that you could generally run on any animation, and it will try and fix up as much as it can without destroying artistic choices in the animation. These would be relatively smart scripts. And then animator assistant scripts, which are used to fix certain things relating to the keyframes that an animator has selected. So this is something that they'd be able to move back and forth from. And then within the animator editor scripts, I've tried to think about it a little bit like the sculpting workflow, or rather, not just sculpting, modeling as well. Something familiar to 3D where there's a script for the reduction of detail. So if you're selecting a certain frame range as an animator, you can reduce the keyframes. Basically, it's the equivalent of decimating and then like subdividing. So there's one that adds more detail back. The current version of the selected reduction only removes frames, not in a smart way, but I do have another version of a general reduction script which does it smartly, where it has a look at how much actually changes in terms of location and quaternion rotation. And so it only reduces them where detail is lost less, if that makes sense. So if there's more of a change in the animation, it tries to preserve that. So improving the selection one will be something I need to do. And then the detail fill in is already a little bit clever because it has a look at the keyframes and a little bit before and after, and it tries to add in keyframes in a way where it smooths out the point change. So if you imagine the animation doing a point to point, like an arm moving up, like it will try to smooth it out when it's adding the keyframes back in. Now, yeah, you could just do that with curves, but what I'm doing so far is I'm focusing on using like a linear interpolation throughout the entire corrective process, just because it's more obvious what's happening in the data when you're watching it back and doing that. So again, though these are not usable, I will put this stuff on Patreon. And yes, the code is AI assisted. It really is a back and forth. I'm quite strict with my design and methodology when it comes to, as I described, like the directions and the pillars and the philosophy and the techniques. For example, there are a lot of things that I don't like suggestion-wise from the AI that I thought, it's worth trying, but I actually think there's much better ways to do it. I can give you a couple of examples. One is when baking an animation down to the control rig, doing it for all of the bones other than the root was fine, but when doing the root, it takes a hell of a lot longer because we're doing it in a smart way where it takes the average position of the feet. AI wanted to do it all in one go, and I was like, no, we can't do that because A, an artist might not need it, and B, it takes a lot longer, so it'd be not nice to kind of keep it as a separate option if they wanted the root controller for making corrections, or if the character was like going upstairs or something and they wanted it to persist at different vertical levels. Another thing is that during the reduction script, I gave it a little bit of leeway algorithm wise, but one thing it came up with was after reducing the frames, then looking at the difference between the gaps and then reintroducing frames. And I was like, that's pointless. Why not just read through the original frames, then make a deduction, and then do the reduction only where it makes sense? So when it comes to the actual script content, it really is a combination of things. It's me throwing ideas and being strict with my choices about how I want someone to actually interact with it. And I'm giving it a little bit of leeway just to work some magic, because sometimes it is really impressive. Like the script to bake the entire animation to the control rig worked first time, And I was like, okay, I wouldn't even be able to do that first time. So there's like a proper back and forth. So you know where to find them if you want to check them out. Again, this does still rely on the Polyhammer tools. Character DNA for importing the metahuman. I may be able to replace that at some point. For the control rig, this comes from the character control rig add-on. But the way I do it is, after the metahuman's been imported, generate the control rig for the unanimated character first, then run through the import process, face, body stitch, reduce animation. At this point, none of it will be visible on the character. Although what I want to do is have a split. So there'll be a version of character with control rig and version of character without control rig. So animator can preview animation on the non-control rig during these first few steps. Then on the control rig one, we then bake to the control rig. Then we make the IK editable again, because that's another step. And then optionally we do the root calculation. And then from there, next phase, animation editing. And this is basically what you would call the cascadeur section, where we're actually making genuine changes to the animation, selecting points on the timeline, making reductions, making animated changes, adding detail back in. There we go. I wasn't actually trying to do anything. Now he's just doing a rabbit stomp on the ground. Lol. You can also see my new pipeline add-on tool, which is unique in the way that it runs local to a Blender file space. Again, I did a video about this recently. I recommend you check that out if you're interested. You'll notice that I haven't actually made the human animation pipeline in here yet because I'm still testing. But again, it would be something like, say, step one would be importing human, of which if I replace character DNA or utilize, my local modified version more, that happen in there. Pipeline 2 would be import animation, from which maybe I would do the import face, import body, body stitch, reduce animation. Then afterwards, it would be baking to the control rig. So with control rig selected, bake stitch to control rig, convert control FK to IK, do the root calculation. So basically an animator could then just click on these pipelines and run them one by one. So it simplifies this entire process of these multiple scripts down into individual operations, which effectively act like add-ons, but they're just steps for a pipeline. And then in theory, these things could be simplified into one big individual step, which by the end would automate the whole thing. So you see how I'm, kind of in the process of replacing software. So let me, if I did one like automatic fix, I would add like the automatic type things to this, and then do like manual fix. Maybe it'll be a pipeline where whatever was selected, we can run a few operations to fix within the time range, or an animator could just click on the functions there. So you're starting to see how I'm designing this human animation pipeline. And before I close this up, I do have, I've got a couple of like what I call pseudocode ideas for fixing things like body slanting and foot sliding automatically across the animation that are a little bit, they either will work or they won't. So I need to work on that first. I would ideally like the fixing scripts to be as automatic as possible. I think I will be able to get somewhere with that. I mean, realistically, software design in this way is just a hell of a lot of A/B testing, right? For a bunch of ideas at the wall, you've got a test, the animation, you've got to target it looking realistic. Test 1, does it look better or worse? Better? Okay, let's try a different version of test 1. Test 2, does it look better or worse? Worse? Throw it away. Take all the ones that look slightly better. Okay, can we combine them? Can we try different variations? Software design is just that, if you're brute forcing it. One idea after another, compare the result. Eventually you get better results. If it's overwhelming doing everything in one go, then just focus on something specific, like foot sliding across the entire animation. You think, okay, what about detecting when one foot on the ground implies that the ground point there should not be moving? There should be a connection between root and foot. If you're running along the logic of one foot on the ground representing static ground, then it gives you a way to kind of estimate how the rest of the bones move and what kind of distance that would mean for the world. There are other ways to do it. In fact, comparing the average position of all bones to a change in other bones on certain conditions, like feet being on or moving the ground, does give you quite a lot of leeway in terms of stabilizing the body. There's just going to be a lot of testing that needs to be done. But like I said, I'll share what I can where I can. At the moment, the character variables are hard-coded into the script. So like detecting the character drown by name is hard-coded. By the end of it, I will have a system that has variables exposed in the pipeline in a way that ideally the script can flag them up. So someone writing pipeline scripts can optionally choose to flag them up for the interface, and they'll be saved as scene properties. But we're not there yet. But I just want to say, more than ever, this has been one of the most complicated things I've ever worked on in Blender. Also, interestingly, while my Patreon actually grew really quickly the last few months doing random Blender experiments, despite the fact that this project has given me the most private messages from people saying, oh, we're watching this carefully, this has been one of the fastest drops in Patreon interest ever. It went from fast growth to nothing. For some reason, working on this human animation project has just killed interest. There's a weird dichotomy now where like I'm getting messages from professionals professionals, like in the video where I mentioned Cascadeur, the CEO of Cascadeur liked the tweet about it. I feel bad for criticizing the software. I really, really, really want to like it. The idea of it's cool. I just haven't been able to get my stuff to work with it properly. So it's been a bit demoralizing that way. It's like, oh, I'm so close to something really, really cool, like an almost professional and super clean animation pipeline from within the studio, requiring like no extra equipment. But at the same time, it's like my community is like, we don't care. Like my inner community. Outer community is like, carry on, carry on, carry on. Inner community is like, what are you doing? So I'm just like, okay, I'll give myself until the end of the month to try and get something usable. Otherwise, just getting back to, you know, the more fun stuff for the connected space and random experiments and all that regular R&D. Thank you for watching. Unicorn emoji if you made it. And I will keep you updated on the project.